Picture this: a farmer in a quiet field, his plow striking something hard beneath the earth. He bends down, brushes away the dirt, and suddenly, his ordinary day transforms into a moment that rewrites history. This isn't just a story, it's how some of the most breathtaking treasures ever discovered came to light. From golden masks that whispered secrets of lost civilizations to scrolls that revealed words penned thousands of years ago, these artifacts aren't just objects. They're time machines, each one holding a fragment of our shared human story. And today, we're about to embark on a journey to uncover 30 of the most valuable artifacts ever unearthed, pieces so rare, so steeped in mystery, that their very existence challenges what we thought we knew about the past. Think about the Rosetta Stone, cracked open to reveal the language of the pharaohs, or the dazzling treasures of Tutankhamun's tomb, buried for millennia before dazzling the modern world. These aren't just relics, they're keys to unlocking entire eras, each with a tale more gripping than the last. Some were stumbled upon by accident, others hunted for centuries, but every one of them carries a price tag that reflects not just gold or jewels, but the weight of history itself. We're talking about artifacts so priceless that museums and collectors would trade fortunes to own them, objects that have ignited wars, inspired legends, and even reshaped our understanding of human ingenuity. But here's the thing: the true value of these treasures isn't just in their monetary worth or even their beauty. It's in the questions they force us to ask. Who crafted them? What civilizations flourished and vanished, leaving only these echoes behind? And what secrets might still lie buried, waiting for the next chance discovery? As we count down these 30 extraordinary finds, you'll witness the drama of their unearthings, the controversies that still swirl around them, and the awe they inspire in everyone who lays eyes on them. So settle in, because by the time we're done, you'll see the past not as a distant shadow, but as a living, breathing story, and you might just find yourself dreaming of the next great discovery waiting beneath our feet. It all starts with a slab of black granite, unassuming at first glance, yet holding the key to unlocking an entire language lost to time. The Rosetta Stone wasn't discovered by archaeologists or scholars, but by French soldiers in 1799, digging trenches near the town of Rashid or Rosetta in Egypt. Imagine their shock when, instead of hitting rubble, they uncovered a stone covered in 3 different scripts: Greek at the bottom, Demotic in the middle, and the mysterious hieroglyphs at the top. At that moment, they had no idea they'd stumbled upon the cipher that would crack open ancient Egypt's secrets. For centuries, hieroglyphs were indecipherable, their meanings as buried as the pharaohs themselves. But the Rosetta Stone changed everything. Scholars realized the same decree, a message praising Pharaoh Ptolemy V, was written in all 3 scripts. Greek, which they understood, became the Rosetta Stone's namesake, allowing linguists like Jean-François Champollion to painstakingly match symbols to sounds and meanings. By 1822, the code was broken, and suddenly, the voices of a civilization silenced for millennia could be heard again. Yet the stone's story doesn't end there. After Napoleon's defeat, it was handed over to the British under the Treaty of Alexandria and has called the British Museum home since 1802. But not everyone agrees it belongs there. Egypt has repeatedly requested its return, arguing it's a stolen piece of their cultural heritage. The British Museum, meanwhile, maintains its role as a global custodian, showcasing it to millions, free of charge, while scholars continue to study its surface, still revealing new insights today. As for its value, Priceless doesn't even begin to cover it. While insured for millions, the stone's true worth lies in what it represents, the moment humanity reclaimed a lost chapter of history. Without it, we might still be gazing at hieroglyphs, wondering what stories they told. And that's the magic of artifacts like these. They're not just relics of the past, but bridges to understanding who we once were and who we've become. Deep in the Valley of the Kings, where the desert winds whisper secrets of the pharaohs, an English archaeologist named Howard Carter knelt before a sealed doorway in 1922. His hands trembled not from fatigue, but from the realization that after 6 years of fruitless digging, he might finally be standing at the threshold of a lost king's tomb. When his patron, Lord Carnarvon, asked if he could see anything in the dim candlelight, Carter's legendary reply echoed through history: "Yes, wonderful things." Behind that door lay the undisturbed burial chamber of Tutankhamun, and crowning the youthful pharaoh's mummified remains was an object so radiant, it seemed to capture the sun itself, the golden funerary mask. Crafted over 3,000 years ago, the mask isn't just a masterpiece of ancient artistry, it's a window into a civilization's soul. Weighing nearly 25 pounds of solid gold inlaid with lapis lazuli, quartz, and obsidian, every detail was designed to ensure the boy king's divinity in the afterlife. The striped Nemes headcloth, the cobra and vulture symbols of unified Egypt, the serene, ageless face, all were meant to transform Tutankhamun into the god Osiris. But what's truly astonishing isn't just the mask's beauty, but its survival. While most royal tombs were plundered within centuries, Tutankhamun's rested undisturbed until Carter's discovery, preserving a time capsule of unimaginable wealth. Yet with the discovery came whispers of a curse. When Lord Carnarvon died mere months later from an infected mosquito bite, coincidentally, just as the tomb was being unsealed, newspapers spun tales of a pharaoh's vengeance. The legend grew as others connected to the excavation met untimely ends, though modern scholars dismiss it as coincidence amplified by sensationalism. The real curse, the ethical debates that still surround the mask today. While it draws millions to Cairo's Egyptian Museum, some argue that displaying a sacred funerary object violates the very beliefs it was meant to honor. Others counter that sharing it globally fosters cultural appreciation, yet Egypt has repeatedly demanded its return from foreign exhibitions. No insurance appraisal could capture the mask's true worth. Beyond the gold and gemstones, its value lies in the stories it tells. Of a teenage pharaoh whose brief reign was nearly erased from history, of artisans whose names are lost but whose skill outshines time, and of the moment modern humanity locked eyes with its ancient past. When Carter first lifted the mask, he didn't just uncover a king, he resurrected an entire worldview, one where death wasn't an end but a transformation. And that's the alchemy of artifacts like this. They don't just belong to museums or nations, but to the human race, a shared inheritance of wonder. Now, shift your gaze from gold to clay, from the splendor of Egypt to the unassuming fragments that rewrote history's oldest narratives. In the stark cliffs above the Dead Sea, where the air shimmers with heat and history, a Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Hib tossed a stone into a cave in 1947, not searching for treasure but chasing a stray goat. What echoed back wasn't the clatter of hooves, but the sound of breaking pottery. Climbing inside, he found jars containing what would soon be hailed as the greatest manuscript discovery of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. These weren't just ancient texts, they were a seismic shock to biblical scholarship, rewriting our understanding of Judaism and Christianity's earliest days. Preserved for over 2,000 years in the dry desert air, the scrolls included fragments of every Hebrew Bible book except Esther, along with hymns, legal texts, and mysterious sectarian writings. The most staggering revelation: some manuscripts predated previously known copies by 1,000 years, proving the remarkable accuracy of later biblical translations. Imagine holding a psalm penned just centuries after King David's reign, or a prophecy of Isaiah untouched by medieval scribes. For scholars, it was like finding the original blueprint of faith traditions, yet controversy erupted almost immediately. Who wrote these scrolls? The dominant theory points to the Essenes, an ascetic Jewish sect that may have hidden them during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. But dissenting scholars argue the text shows signs of multiple authors, perhaps even a library smuggled from Jerusalem's temple. The debate rages on, fueled by the scroll's cryptic passages describing a teacher of righteousness and a coming apocalyptic war. Some fringe theorists have spun wilder claims, suggesting links to early Christianity, though most academics dismiss this as sensationalism. Preserving these fragile fragments has been its own epic. Written on parchment and papyrus, many were crumbling to dust when found. Early restoration attempts, like taping them together with adhesive tape, now seem horrifying, but conservators today use multispectral imaging and climate-controlled displays to halt decay. The painstaking digitization project allows anyone to scrutinize these texts online, magnifying faded ink strokes invisible to the naked eye. Priceless doesn't begin to describe their worth. While insured for millions, their true value lies in the questions they force us to confront about faith, history, and the messy human process of how sacred texts evolve. They remind us that even the most revered traditions weren't set in stone, but in fragile scrolls, waiting centuries for a shepherd's errant stone to wake them from the dust. Beneath the sun-baked fields of China's Shaanxi province, a group of farmers digging a well in 1974 struck something far stranger than water, a life-sized clay head, its stern expression frozen in time. What began as a routine chore erupted into one of archaeology's most staggering revelations. The Terracotta Army, an underground battalion of over 8,000 soldiers, horses, and chariots, standing guard for over 2 millennia beside the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This wasn't just a random collection of statues. Each warrior was crafted with astonishing individuality. Different facial features, hairstyles, even expressions, as if real soldiers had been transformed into clay. Some stood tall with piercing gazes, others knelt with bows at the ready, their original paint still faintly visible in vibrant purples and greens. The scale was jaw-dropping, pits spanning the size of football fields arranged in battle formation, with infantry flanked by cavalry and officers. And yet, this was merely the periphery. The emperor's tomb itself, a rumored underground palace filled with rivers of mercury and celestial wonders, remained sealed, protected by ancient booby traps and a government wary of disturbing what might lie within. Qin Shi Huang's obsession with immortality took literal form in this clay legion. After unifying China's warring states in the 3rd century B.C., he commissioned the army to protect him in the afterlife, a testament to both his power and his paranoia. But the artistry revealed something deeper. The fingerprints of countless nameless laborers pressed into the clay, the subtle variations in armor detailing that hinted at workshops competing to please the emperor. Modern scans even show assembly lines of parts, interchangeable arms, legs, and torsos mass-produced like ancient IKEA furniture, then customized with unique heads and insignias. The excavation's painstaking progress has been as dramatic as the discovery itself. Early digs suffered tragic missteps, once vivid paint flaking off within minutes of exposure to air, forcing archaeologists to develop new preservation techniques on the fly. Today, infrared imaging and 3D printing help reconstruct shattered figures, while ongoing digs suggest the army might be just the tip of the necropolis's secrets. Nearby pits reveal terracotta acrobats, bureaucrats, even exotic birds, an entire microcosm of the emperor's court frozen in clay. Debates still simmer over whether the site should be fully unearthed. Some argue technology isn't yet advanced enough to preserve the tomb's rumored treasures without damage. Others counter that leaving it sealed denies humanity a chance to confront its own history. Meanwhile, the warriors themselves have become global icons, traveling the world in blockbuster exhibits that leave viewers marveling at their eerie, lifelike presence. What's the value of an army that never fought a battle? Beyond the staggering insurance estimates, individual warriors have been appraised in the millions. Their true worth lies in the way they collapse time. Stare into the eyes of a terracotta general, and you're face to face not just with an artist's skill, but with the ambition of an emperor who dared to conquer death itself. And perhaps that's the most haunting revelation of all. That immortality, in the end, wasn't found in elixirs or spells, but in the stubborn persistence of memory, molded in clay and buried patiently for the future to rediscover. Off the coast of a tiny Greek island in the spring of 1901, sponge divers resurfaced with more than just sea sponges. They hauled up fragments of corroded bronze that would shatter our assumptions about ancient technology. The Antikythera Mechanism, named for the island near where it was found, looked like little more than a lump of oxidized metal at first glance. But when archaeologists began cleaning away 2,000 years of encrusted sea life, they uncovered gears, dozens of them interlocking with a precision that shouldn't have existed until the Renaissance. This wasn't just another shipwreck artifact, it was the world's first analog computer, a celestial calculator so advanced it would take over a century of study to fully grasp its genius. Imagine a device the size of a shoebox, its front face adorned with concentric dials and tiny hand-etched inscriptions. Turn the crank on the side, and the gears would whir to life, predicting solar eclipses, tracking the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even modeling the irregular orbit of the moon. The Greeks called it their little cosmos, a mechanical universe in miniature. But here's what stuns scientists most: the mechanism's differential gear, a component so sophisticated it wouldn't reappear in Europe until the 1600s. How did artisans in the 1st century BCE achieve such engineering marvels without modern tools? The answer might lie in the lost workshops of Rhodes, where legends say Archimedes himself built similar devices. The shipwreck that preserved the Antikythera Mechanism tells its own dramatic tale. The vessel, likely a Roman cargo ship carrying looted Greek treasures, sank in a storm around 65 BCE. Among the wreckage were statues, glassware, and this one-of-a-kind device perhaps destined for the private study of a wealthy Roman collector. For centuries, it lay broken into 82 fragments, its secrets locked in corroded gears until 20th century. X-ray technology revealed hidden inscriptions and gear trains invisible to the naked eye. Modern reconstructions have only deepened the mystery. The mechanism didn't just track celestial events, it encoded the Greeks' intricate understanding of Babylonian astronomy, Egyptian calendar systems, and their own mathematical innovations. Some researchers believe it might have been used for teaching, or even as a kind of philosopher's status symbol. But the most haunting question remains: how much more advanced technology was lost? Cicero wrote of a bronze sphere built by Archimedes that modeled planetary movements. Could the Antikythera Mechanism be a glimpse of a wider tradition of ancient mechanical genius, most of it swallowed by time? Today, the fragments reside in Athens' National Archaeological Museum, their green-tinged gears mesmerizing visitors. While insurance appraisals hover in the tens of millions, the mechanism's true value lies in how it rewrites history. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth that technological brilliance isn't always a straight line forward. Sometimes it's a spark that flares bright, then vanishes for millennia, waiting for the right diver, the right storm, the right moment to resurface and remind us how much we still don't know about the past. And speaking of vanished knowledge, few artifacts embody mystery quite like our next discovery. A golden relic not just adorned with artistry but steeped in blood. Some treasures shimmer with more than just light, they carry whispers of misfortune, drawing power from the superstitions that cling to them like shadows. Among these infamous gems, two stand apart, not just for their staggering size and brilliance, but for the blood-stained sagas woven into their facets, the Hope Diamond and the Koh-i-Noor. One a deep ocean blue, the other a blinding mountain of light. Both have left trails of tragedy and conquest in their wake, igniting debates that stretch from ancient thrones to modern courtrooms. The Hope Diamond's journey reads like a Gothic novel. Mined from India's Golconda region in the 17th century, It began as a massive 115-carat stone, allegedly plucked from the eye of a Hindu idol, a sacrilege that supposedly triggered its curse. French gem merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who first brought it to Europe, reportedly died mauled by wolves, though historians note he actually passed away peacefully in Russia. The diamond's next owner, Louis XIV, saw his reign crumble amid war and famine, while Marie Antoinette, who may have worn it, met the guillotine. Cut down to 67 carats, the stone vanished during the French Revolution, only to resurface decades later in the hands of London banker Henry Philip Hope, whose family fortunes mysteriously collapsed. Later owners included a Turkish sultan stabbed by rebels and American heiress Evelyn Walsh McLean, whose son died in a car crash and daughter by suicide. Even the Smithsonian, where the diamond now resides, hasn't escaped eerie coincidences. A curator handling the gem died in a car accident, and a burglar once broke into its case only to be struck by lightning weeks later. Then there's the Koh-i-Noor, Persian for Mountain of Light. This 105-carat beast of a diamond carries a legacy steeped not just in curses but in empires. Originally mined in India's Kakatiya dynasty, it passed through Mughal emperors, Persian warlords who blinded its owners to claim it, and Sikh Maharajas who embedded it into throne decorations. British colonialists seized it in 1849, forcing child Maharaja Duleep Singh to gift it to Queen Victoria. But the stone's brutality didn't end there. Recut to enhance its brilliance for Victorian tastes, it shed nearly half its weight, and whispers persisted that it brought doom to any male ruler who wore it. Today, it crowns the Queen Mother's state crown in the Tower of London, but India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan all demand its return, turning the gem into a geopolitical lightning rod. Ownership disputes surrounding these stones reveal deeper tensions. France has never formally asked for the Hope diamond's return, focusing instead on collaborative research, while Britain flatly refuses to repatriate the Koh-i-Noor, citing a long-standing tradition of gifted crown jewels. But critics argue both gems are spoils of colonial plunder, their current homes sanitizing violent histories. The Smithsonian, for its part, acknowledges the Hope diamond's contested origins but argues its display educates millions free of charge. Meanwhile, the Koh-i-Noor's fate remains locked in diplomatic stalemates. When India's government hinted at legal action in 2016, British officials retorted that trying to undo history would empty museums worldwide. Valuing such artifacts is a quagmire. Insurers estimate the Hope diamond at $250 million, the Koh-i-Noor at nearly $1 billion, but these figures ignore intangible worth. For some, these stones symbolize resilience. The Koh-i-Noor, for instance, features in Bollywood films as a metaphor for India's stolen pride. For others, they're cautionary tales about greed. Scientists, meanwhile, prize them for their geologic rarity. The Hope's phosphorescent blue glow under UV light remains unmatched. Perhaps the real curse isn't supernatural, it's human nature. Gems like these reflect our obsession with beauty and power, our willingness to rewrite history for ownership, and our struggle to reconcile awe with ethics. They don't need mystical hexes to be dangerous. Their allure alone has proven enough to topple kingdoms and divide nations. And as long as they glitter behind glass, they'll keep challenging us to ask, who do treasures truly belong to? Those who took them, those who display them, or the cultures from which they were torn? From cursed diamonds, we turn to a discovery that redefined prehistoric art, a carving so delicate it shouldn't have survived the Ice Age. Buried beneath a quiet mound in Suffolk, England for over 1,300 years, the Sutton Hoo Helmet emerged not as a mere relic, but as a ghostly face from the epic poem Beowulf Made Real. In the summer of 1939, as Europe teetered on the brink of war, archaeologist Basil Brown unearthed the outline of a 27-meter-long ship beneath the earth, a royal burial chamber for an Anglo-Saxon king. Among the treasures lay the helmet's shattered remains, crumpled by the weight of time, yet still whispering of a warrior's grandeur. Reconstructing it was like solving a three-dimensional puzzle with half the pieces missing. The original, crafted in the early 7th century, had disintegrated into hundreds of fragile iron fragments, its once gleaming surface reduced to rust. But conservators noticed something extraordinary. The corrosion had preserved the impression of the helmet's intricate decorations in the soil like a photographic negative. By studying these ghost marks, they painstakingly recreated the visage of a lord, eyebrows arching into winged serpents, a mustachioed face guard resembling a soaring bird, and a nosepiece that doubled as a dragon's head. The effect was both magnificent and unsettling, as if the wearer sought to channel the ferocity of myth itself. This wasn't just battle gear, it was a crown forged in iron. The helmet's symbolism was layered like the rings of a tree. The serpentine designs echoed Norse and Germanic legends, suggesting the king's lineage stretched across the North Sea. The tinned surface would have gleamed like silver in sunlight, a walking declaration of power. Most striking of all, the absence of battle damage. This was likely ceremonial armor, meant to intimidate in peacetime councils as much as on the battlefield. Scholars now believe it belonged to King Rewrote of East Anglia, a ruler who balanced pagan beliefs with the new tide of Christianity, a duality mirrored in the helmet's fusion of animalistic motifs and refined craftsmanship. The Sutton Hoo excavation rewrote history overnight. Before this discovery, the Anglo-Saxons were often dismissed as barbaric invaders, but the helmet's sophistication, its repoussé metalwork, its geometric precision proved otherwise. Here was a culture with poets, engineers, and diplomats, their artistry rivaling Byzantium's. The site's other treasures, golden belt buckles, lyres, and a Byzantine silver feast set, painted a portrait of a kingdom connected to trade routes spanning Europe and beyond. Yet the helmet's modern saga is just as gripping. During World War II, the treasures were hidden in a London underground tunnel to protect them from bombs. The British Museum's 1971 reconstruction was hailed as a marvel, but recent CT scans revealed startling errors, misplaced fragments, incorrect angles. A second reconstruction in 2015 corrected these, using 3D printing to align pieces with millimeter accuracy. Each iteration peels back another layer of mystery, like polishing a tarnished mirror to see the past more clearly. Why does this corroded iron crown captivate us so? Perhaps because it's more than a relic, it's a metaphor. The way it was pieced together from fragments mirrors how historians reconstruct lost eras. Its dual identity as weapon and artwork reflects the Anglo-Saxons' own complexity, and its survival against the odds reminds us that some legacies refuse to stay buried. When you stand before it today in the British Museum, you're not just seeing a helmet, you're meeting the gaze of a king who shaped a nation's soul, one whose voice, though silent for centuries, still echoes in the metal he left behind. Now let's travel from the misty shores of England to the sun-scorched deserts of Peru, where a golden artifact wasn't just worn, it was believed to hold the power of the gods themselves. In the spring of 1820, a farmer named Yorgos Kentrotas was digging through ancient ruins on the Greek island of Milos when his shovel struck something far more extraordinary than broken pottery, the smooth curve of a marble shoulder emerging from the earth. What he'd uncovered would soon become one of the most iconic sculptures in human history, the Venus de Milo, but this wasn't a pristine masterpiece waiting to be admired. The goddess lay in fragments, her arms missing, her pedestal nowhere in sight. Yet even in pieces, her serene beauty and masterful craftsmanship were unmistakable. The scramble to claim her began almost immediately. French naval officers docked nearby recognized her value and negotiated a hasty purchase, smuggling her aboard their ship despite protests from local islanders. By the time she reached Paris, the Venus had become a sensation, her incomplete state only adding to her mystique. Art historians marveled at her Hellenistic artistry, the delicate twist of her hips, the fluid drapery clinging to her legs, a technique so advanced it made the marble seem to breathe. But the mystery of her missing limbs sparked endless debate. Was she holding an apple, a mirror, or perhaps spinning thread? Some theories suggested she was part of a larger group sculpture, her arms reaching out to another figure lost to time. The truth remains buried with her original pedestal, which vanished during transport and may have held the key to her identity. Her arrival in Europe couldn't have been more perfectly timed. The 19th century was in the throes of neoclassical obsession, and the Venus de Milo became its undisputed icon. Artists like Renoir and Cézanne studied her proportions, while critics hailed her as the epitome of idealized beauty, a stark contrast to the rigid symmetry of earlier classical works. Yet there's irony in her fame. Modern scholars now believe she wasn't even a Venus, but likely a depiction of the sea goddess Amphitrite worshipped on Melos. The misidentification stuck, forever branding her as the goddess of love in the public imagination. Today, she holds court in the Louvre's Salle des Caryatides, drawing millions who circle her plinth, searching for answers in her blank marble eyes. The museum's careful lighting emphasizes her ethereal presence, but controversy shadows her display. Greece has repeatedly requested her return, citing her looting during Ottoman occupation, while the Louvre maintains she was legally acquired. Meanwhile, replicas span the globe from Las Vegas casinos to Tokyo art schools, each one a testament to her enduring influence. What makes a broken statue so priceless? It's not just the mastery of her carving or the allure of her missing limbs. The Venus de Milo represents something deeper, humanity's fascination with the incomplete, the way our imaginations rush to fill the gaps history leaves behind. She's a mirror reflecting not just ancient artistry, but our own endless desire to reconstruct the past even when the pieces don't quite fit. In a dusty corner of Baghdad's National Museum sits an unassuming clay jar, no taller than your hand, sealed with asphalt and fitted with a copper cylinder and iron rod. Discovered in 1936 near the ancient village of Kujat Rabu, this humble object might just rewrite our understanding of human ingenuity. Dubbed the Baghdad Battery, it dates back to the Parthian era around 2,000 years ago, and to this day, historians and scientists lock horns over its true purpose. Was this really a primitive galvanic cell, capable of generating electricity centuries before Volta's famous battery? Or is it just a case of modern wishful thinking projected onto the past? The theory that it functioned as a battery comes down to its uncanny resemblance to a basic electrochemical cell. Fill the jar with an acidic liquid, vinegar or grape juice perhaps, and the iron rod and copper cylinder would create a chemical reaction, producing a small but measurable electric current. In the 1940s, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, who first studied the artifact in depth, demonstrated this by constructing a replica that generated around 1 volt of electricity. That might not sound like much, but string several together, and suddenly you've got enough power to electroplate gold onto silver, a technique the Parthians were known to use. Could these batteries have been the secret behind their dazzling metalwork? Yet skepticism runs deep. Critics point out that no wires or conductors were found with the jars, and no contemporary texts mention anything resembling electrical devices. Some argue it might have been a storage vessel for sacred scrolls, the iron rod merely a mounting for parchment. Others suggest it was part of a medicinal device, possibly used for electrotherapy, an ancient form of pain relief documented in Greek and Roman texts. The asphalt seal, they note, would have been equally useful for preserving liquids or keeping out moisture. The debate taps into a bigger question: how do we interpret artifacts without clear context? Ancient civilizations often repurposed objects in ways that defy modern categorization. What looks like a battery to us might have been a ritual vessel or a tool for alchemy. Even if the Baghdad battery wasn't intentionally designed to produce electricity, Its accidental functionality raises tantalizing possibilities. Did craftsmen stumble upon its shocking properties while using it for something else? And if so, did that knowledge vanish with the fall of empires, only to be rediscovered millennia later? Modern experiments keep the mystery alive. Engineers have shown that stacking replicas could generate enough voltage for practical uses. From electroplating to religious rituals, imagine priests using mild shocks to create miraculous sensations. But without more examples or corroborating evidence, the battery theory remains in the realm of intriguing speculation. What's undeniable is the artifact's power to challenge assumptions. It forces us to ask, how much ancient technology have we underestimated or misinterpreted? Today, the Baghdad battery sits quietly behind glass, its true story still uncharged. Whether it's proof of prehistoric engineering or simply a clever storage jar, it embodies the thrill of historical discovery, the way a single object can spark endless questions. And maybe that's its real legacy, not as a battery but as a catalyst for curiosity, jolting us awake to the possibility that the past might have been far more electrifying than we ever imagined. Now let's shift from the mysteries of ancient science to a relic that speaks to a very different kind of power, one wrapped in gold, silk, and the divine right of kings. High above the arid plains of southern Peru, where the earth stretches into a vast canvas of reddish-brown dust, an archaeologist named Toribio Mejia Zesp made an astonishing observation in 1927, but not from the ground. It wasn't until commercial flights began crisscrossing the region in the 1930s that the full spectacle revealed itself. Colossal shapes etched into the desert floor, some stretching over 1,200 feet, visible only from the sky. These were the Nazca lines, a labyrinth of geometric patterns, spirals, and staggering depictions of animals: a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with legs curled as if mid-step, even a whale swimming across the dry land. The precision is breathtaking, created between 500 BCE and 500 CE. By the Nazca people, the lines weren't carved or painted, but scraped into the Earth's surface, revealing lighter-colored subsoil beneath. The desert's unique climate, almost no rain, winds that sweep away dust but leave heavier stones, acted as a natural preservative, locking these designs in place for millennia. But how did a civilization without flight craft such massive, perfectly proportioned figures? The answer lies in a mix of simple tools and ingenious scaling techniques. Researchers believe the Nazca used ropes and wooden stakes to plot out smaller versions, then enlarged them proportionally, like a master artist working from a sketch. Theories about their purpose spiral as wildly as the lines themselves. Early hypotheses suggested astronomical calendars aligning with solstices or constellations. Others propose ritual pathways where processions followed the lines during spiritual ceremonies, their footsteps echoing in devotion. Then there's the more controversial claim that these were messages or landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors. While sensational, this theory crumbles under scrutiny. The line's cultural context fits firmly within Nazca traditions, particularly their reverence for water in this parched landscape. Some animal figures mirror motifs on Nazca pottery, likely representing deities tied to fertility and rain. The most compelling evidence, satellite imagery, reveals many lines lead to ancient water sources, suggesting they might have been part of pilgrimage routes or offerings to summon life-giving rains. Preserving these fragile masterpieces is a race against time. Unlike stone monuments, the lines are vulnerable to even minor disturbances. In 2014, Greenpeace activists damaged a section while placing a protest banner, sparking global outrage. More insidious threats loom: illegal mining, encroaching urban development, and climate change bringing erratic rainfall that could erode the delicate topsoil. Efforts to protect them include drones for real-time monitoring and strict no-fly zones, but enforcement in such a remote area remains patchy. Why do these desert drawings captivate us so? Perhaps because they embody humanity's oldest impulse to leave a mark to say we were here. The Nazca couldn't have known their work would endure for 2,000 years, or that it would take the invention of flight for the world to truly see it. Yet in their patient scraping of the earth, they achieved something timeless, art that transcends its creators, whispering across centuries to remind us that even the driest ground can hold the seeds of wonder. Now let's journey from the open desert to a hidden chamber where a single artifact didn't just reflect history, it reshaped it. Rising from the volcanic slopes of Rapa Nui, the Moai stand as silent sentinels of a civilization that dared to carve gods from stone. These towering figures, some weighing over 80 tons, weren't just sculptures, they were vessels of ancestral power, their hollow eyes gazing inland to watch over the living. Carved by the island's Polynesian settlers between the 13th and 16th centuries, each Moai represented a deified chief, their elongated features and prominent brows echoing the artistry of distant Marquesan ancestors. But here's what baffles archaeologists. How did a society without wheels or draft animals move these colossi miles across rugged terrain? Theories abound, each more daring than the last. Early European visitors assumed the statues had been dragged on wooden sledges, but experiments in the 1980s revealed a more elegant solution. When researchers replicated the islanders' oral traditions, rocking the Moai side to side in a walking motion using ropes, they found a small team could walk a multi-ton statue upright with astonishing efficiency. Other studies suggest the island's ancient roads, carved with grooves and lubricated with sweet potato paste, acted as ceremonial pathways where Moai were carefully shuttled to their final platforms, or ahu. Yet mysteries linger. Some statues wear massive cylindrical pukao headdresses made of red scoria, a fragile volcanic rock. How these were lifted onto the Moai's heads without pulleys remains one of archaeology's great riddles. The Moai's modern revival reads like a cultural renaissance. By the 19th century, European contact had decimated the Rapa Nui people through disease and slave raids, leaving most statues toppled. But in the 1950s, a team led by Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl re-erected 15 Moai using only traditional methods, sparking global fascination. Today, the islanders themselves lead restoration efforts, blending archaeology with oral history. At Rororoku, the volcanic quarry where nearly half the Moai still rest unfinished in the rock, you can see the chisel marks of craftsmen frozen in time as if they stepped away yesterday. But this rebirth faces urgent threats. Tourism, while vital to the local economy, wears delicate sites thin. Visitors climbing on the ahu erode sacred ground, while moisture from their breath accelerates weathering on the statue's porous stone. Climate change looms even larger, rising sea levels gnaw at coastal platforms, and stronger storms batter exposed Moai. In 2022, a fire sparked by illegal farming raged across Rororoku, blackening dozens of irreplaceable statues. Conservationists now employ 3D mapping to monitor millimeter-scale erosion, while Rapa Nui elders push for visitor limits to protect what they call mana, the spiritual energy imbued in the stone. What gives these silent giants their enduring power? Perhaps it's their sheer audacity, a people carving monoliths with stone tools, moving them with nothing but ingenuity and muscle. Or maybe it's their warning etched in the landscape. Rapa Nui's civilization nearly collapsed from deforestation and overexploitation, a cautionary tale resonating in our age of climate crisis. When you stand before a Moai, you're not just seeing a statue, you're witnessing a conversation across centuries where the past asks if we'll listen this time. In a dimly lit chapel in Turin, Italy, a single piece of linen rests behind bulletproof glass, its surface bearing the faint but unmistakable imprint of a man's face and body. The Shroud of Turin isn't just a relic, it's a lightning rod for faith, science, and centuries of heated debate. To believers, this 14-foot-long cloth is the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ, its mysterious image formed during the resurrection. To skeptics, it's an elaborate medieval forgery, a divine hoax woven with human hands. But what makes this artifact truly extraordinary isn't just the question of its origin, it's how it refuses to yield easy answers, even under the scrutiny of modern technology. The shroud first appeared in historical records in the mid-1400s when a French knight displayed it in Liary, claiming it was Christ's burial cloth. But its journey before that remains shrouded in mystery. Some theories trace it back to Constantinople, where a cloth described as bearing Christ's likeness vanished during the Fourth Crusade. The image itself is haunting. In negative, the faint stains resolve into a detailed portrait of a bearded man with wounds matching biblical accounts of crucifixion. Lacerations on the back, puncture marks at the wrists and feet, even a spear wound in the side. Forensic pathologists note the blood flows are anatomically precise, pooling in ways that suggest real trauma, not artistic license. Then came the bombshell of 1988. With the Vatican's permission, 3 independent labs performed radiocarbon dating on a small sample of the shroud. The results pointed squarely to the Middle Ages between 1260 and 1390. Case closed, not quite. Critics quickly highlighted flaws in the testing. The sample came from a repaired edge, possibly contaminated by medieval fire damage. Later studies noted the shroud's unique weave matches 1st-century Palestinian textiles, and pollen grains embedded in the fibers originate from plants native to Jerusalem. Even the carbon dating method itself faces challenges. Some researchers argue atmospheric carbon fluctuations could skew medieval results. The scientific intrigue deepens when you examine how the image formed. Unlike paint or dye, the markings aren't on the surface but penetrate only the outermost fibers, as if produced by a brief, intense burst of radiation. Attempts to replicate the effect using medieval techniques, like rubbing linen with acid or exposing it to sunlight, fall short. Some scientists propose a natural corona discharge from a charged body, while others speculate about unknown chemical reactions. But here's the rub. No one has convincingly recreated the shroud's exact properties, leaving its creation as enigmatic as ever. For the faithful, the shroud transcends scientific debate. It's a tangible connection to the divine, venerated by popes and pilgrims alike. When it's displayed, a rare event drawing millions, the atmosphere crackles with devotion. Yet, even within the church, opinions vary. Some clergy embrace it as a miracle, while others caution against treating it as proof of faith. After all, Christianity traditionally prioritizes spiritual over physical evidence. Perhaps the shroud's greatest power lies in its duality. It exists at the crossroads of belief and skepticism, a mirror reflecting what we choose to see. Whether it's a medieval masterpiece or a 1st-century relic, its endurance as a symbol is undeniable. In an age where science and faith often clash, the shroud reminds us that some mysteries resist resolution, and that the search for answers can be as sacred as the answers themselves. Half a world away from the biblical lands, beneath the ruins of ancient Babylon, a humble clay cylinder no larger than a loaf of bread would shake our understanding of history's first empires. In 1879, British archaeologists sifting through Mesopotamia's dust uncovered the Cyrus cylinder, a document so revolutionary, it's been called the world's first declaration of human rights. Etched in Akkadian cuneiform, the text recounts Persian King Cyrus the Great's conquest of Babylon in 539 B.C.E., but what stunned scholars wasn't his victory speech. It was his radical policies, freeing enslaved peoples, allowing deported populations like the Jews to return home, and permitting diverse religions to flourish under his rule. The cylinder's significance transcends its size. Unlike the boastful monuments of other conquerors, Cyrus framed his reign as one of restoration, not destruction. "I gathered all their inhabitants and restored their dwellings," he declares, detailing how he repaired temples and returned plundered gods to their sanctuaries. This wasn't just propaganda. Archaeological evidence confirms Jewish exiles did return to Jerusalem under his decree, rebuilding their temple as recorded in the Book of Ezra. The cylinder's language echoes biblical themes of liberation, leading some scholars to suggest it influenced Hebrew scriptures. Modern Iran has embraced the artifact as a national symbol, replicating it at the United Nations as an emblem of tolerance. Yet its display in London's British Museum remains contentious. While Iran officially loaned it for exhibitions in 2010 and 2013, many Iranians view its permanent retention abroad as cultural dispossession, a remnant of colonial-era excavations. The museum argues its global accessibility justifies its keeping, noting delicate clay requires stable conservation conditions. What makes this cracked cylinder priceless isn't just its age, but its enduring relevance. In a world still grappling with forced migration and religious strife, Cyrus's vision, carved in fire-hardened clay, offers a startlingly modern blueprint for coexistence. It proves that even empires built by conquest could choose mercy over tyranny, and that the echoes of such choices can resonate for millennia. From the deserts of Mesopotamia, we journey next to a very different kind of treasure, one not made of gold or clay, but of words so explosive they were hidden in a cave for 2,000 years. Buried in the dense jungles of Mexico's Gulf Coast, the Olmec colossal heads emerge from the earth like silent giants, massive stone visages weighing up to 50 tons each, their features weathered but unmistakably human. Discovered in the mid-19th century by plantation workers clearing land, these towering sculptures weren't initially recognized for what they were. How could they be? The idea that an ancient civilization predating the Maya by centuries could carve such monoliths seemed impossible. But as more heads were uncovered, 17 to date, each one revealed the same striking details: flattened noses, thick lips, and helmet-like headgear, all carved with astonishing precision from solid basalt. The sheer logistics of their creation boggled the mind. The Olmec, often called Mesoamerica's mother culture, flourished between 1200 and 400 BCE, yet they left no written records, only these stone sentinels. The basalt came from the Tuxtla Mountains, quarried miles from where the heads were eventually placed. Without wheels or draft animals, the Olmec likely transported these boulders on rafts along rivers, then rolled them on log rollers overland. The carving itself, done with stone tools, would have taken generations of artisans. But why? The prevailing theory suggests these are portraits of rulers, their flattened features reflecting deliberate aesthetic choices or even real-life practices like cranial binding. The helmets might signify ballgame gear or warrior status, hinting at a society where power was displayed through sheer, unmissable grandeur. What's truly haunting is how little we know about the civilization that made them. The Olmec cities, like La Venta and San Lorenzo, were abandoned long before European contact, their decline as mysterious as their rise. Some heads were deliberately buried or mutilated, perhaps during revolts or regime changes. Others lay half-finished in quarries, as if the sculptors vanished mid-stroke. The Olmec left behind other marvels: jade masks, pyramid complexes, even evidence of early writing, but the heads remain their most iconic legacy. Modern efforts to study them face unique challenges. Looters and environmental wear have damaged some, while others were moved to museums, disrupting their original context. Yet new technologies like ground-penetrating radar suggest more heads may still lie hidden, waiting to be found. Each discovery peels back another layer of Olmec identity, forcing us to reconsider what we thought we knew about the cradle of Mesoamerican civilization. Standing before one of these heads, you're struck not just by their size, but by their humanity. They aren't gods or monsters, they're individuals frozen in stone. Whether they represent kings, warriors, or mythic ancestors, their message is clear: we were here. And in their silent vigilance, they challenge us to remember that greatness isn't measured by the clarity of history's record, but by the weight of what endures. On a windswept beach on Scotland's Isle of Lewis in 1831, a local farmer stumbled upon a peculiar sight, small, expressive faces peering up from the sand. What he'd found was no child's toy, but a cache of 93 intricately carved chess pieces, now known as the Lewis chessmen. Crafted from walrus ivory and whale teeth in the late 12th century, these figures are a masterpiece of Norse artistry, their details so vivid you can almost hear the clatter of a medieval game in progress. The rooks biting their shields in fury, the bishops clutching their crosiers with solemn dignity, even the queen resting her chin on her hand as if pondering her next move, each piece pulses with personality. Their origins trace to Scandinavia, likely Norway, where artisans blended Viking flair with the burgeoning medieval European aesthetic. But how did they end up buried in Scotland? The best guess involves a merchant ship avoiding stormy seas, their precious cargo lost or hidden for safekeeping, only to wait 7 centuries for discovery. Now shift from the cold North Sea to a muddy field in Staffordshire, England, where in 2009, metal detectorist Terry Herbert's machine shrieked with a signal that would rewrite Anglo-Saxon history. Beneath the soil lay the Staffordshire hoard, a glittering avalanche of over 3,000 fragments, nearly all of them martial gold. Sword hilts crusted with garnets, helmet cheek pieces etched with interlacing beasts, cross-shaped plaques that may have adorned shields or altars. This wasn't treasure buried for safekeeping, but war loot stripped from fallen foes and offered to the gods. Dating to the 7th century, the hoard's craftsmanship is staggering. Microscopic analysis reveals filigree so fine it would challenge modern jewelers, with animal motifs twisting into geometric perfection. The gold alone weighs over 11 pounds, but its value lies deeper. This was the spoils of Mercia, England's most powerful kingdom at the time, likely hidden after a battle, perhaps even by King Penda himself, the pagan ruler who defied Christian conversion. Though separated by 500 years, these treasures tell parallel tales of artistry and violence. The chessmen embody the Norse world's love of strategic play, their whimsy belying the Viking reputation for brutality. Their survival is a fluke. Ivory rarely endures centuries in damp soil, making their crisp details miraculous. The Staffordshire hoard, by contrast, is all martial splendor, its gold whispering of a blood-soaked era when kingdoms rose and fell by the sword. Yet both finds share something deeper. They were lost to time by accident, not ritual. The chessmen might have been a merchant's abandoned stock, the hoard a warrior's hurried stash, never reclaimed. Their modern stories diverge just as dramatically. The Lewis chessmen sparked immediate fascination, dividing between the British Museum and Edinburgh's National Museum, where they're displayed as whimsical ambassadors of medieval life. The Staffordshire hoard, after a fierce fundraising campaign, remains in the Midlands, its fragments painstakingly reassembled like a golden jigsaw puzzle. Controversy clings to both. Scotland periodically demands the chessmen's return, while the hoard's pagan origins still stir debates about England's Christian narrative. What unites them is their power to collapse time. Hold a Lewis chessman, and you're touching the same piece a Norse trader might have fingered 800 years ago. Examine a Staffordshire sword fragment, and you're inches from the grip of a warrior who fought for his life. These artifacts don't just illustrate history, they let you reach through the centuries and brush against its pulse. And that's the real magic, not gold or ivory, but the human stories etched into every groove and garnet, waiting for the light to find them again. Tucked away in Yale University's Beinecke Library lies a book that has defied comprehension for over 6 centuries. The Voynich manuscript, named after the Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912, is a 240-page puzzle written in an unknown script, accompanied by illustrations so bizarre they seem plucked from a fever dream. Botanicals with impossible roots, nude women bathing in green liquid, zodiac wheels with unfamiliar constellations, every page pulses with cryptic energy. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, This book's language resists every attempt at decipherment, from medieval cryptographers to modern supercomputers. Theories about its origins spiral from scholarly to sensational. Some argue it's a coded alchemical text, its strange plants representing esoteric ingredients for elixirs. Others see it as an elaborate herbal lexicon, though none of its flora match known species. The most tantalizing hypothesis, it's a lost language, possibly a constructed one, created by a polymath like Roger Bacon or even Leonardo da Vinci's predecessors. But skeptics counter that it might be an elegant hoax, a Renaissance-era con artist's creation designed to dupe wealthy patrons hungry for occult knowledge. The argument gains traction from the manuscript's statistical quirks. Its word patterns resemble natural language, yet defy syntactic rules, much like a clever forgery. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. Artificial intelligence analyzing the text in 2019 suggested links to Hebrew, but attempts to translate yielded gibberish. Meanwhile, marginal annotations in faint Latin and a suspiciously erased ownership signature hint at a trail of frustrated owners, each failing to crack its code. Even its parchment tells a story. Recent multispectral imaging revealed subtle edits, as if the author revised their own indecipherable work. Why does this unreadable book captivate us? Perhaps because it's the ultimate literary mirror. Cryptographers see a cipher to break, historians glimpse a medieval mind at play, and artists marvel at its otherworldly visions. In our age of information overload, the Voynich manuscript remains the last great silent text, a reminder that some secrets refuse to surrender, no matter how fiercely we interrogate the past. In the quiet French countryside near the village of Montignac, 4 teenagers and their dogs stumbled upon a hidden entrance in September 1940. What began as an ordinary afternoon of exploration turned into one of the most breathtaking archaeological discoveries of the century, the Lascaux cave paintings. As they squeezed through the narrow opening, their lanterns flickered against the walls, revealing a gallery of animals so vivid they seemed to breathe in the dim light. Bulls the size of small cars charged across the rock, their muscular forms rendered in ochre and charcoal. Horses with flowing manes galloped alongside mysterious beasts with straight horns like unicorns, all painted by hands that had last touched these walls 17,000 years earlier. The sophistication of these images shatters every stereotype about primitive art. These weren't crude sketches, but masterpieces of perspective and movement. Artists used the natural contours of the cave walls to give their subjects volume, as if the stone itself were alive. A bull's shoulder might bulge where the rock swelled, or a deer's leg stretch along a crevice. They even employed early animation techniques. Some horses appear to trot when viewed by flickering torchlight, thanks to multiple overlapping outlines. But the true genius lies in what's missing. There are no landscapes, no horizons, just floating creatures, their hooves barely grazing invisible ground. Some scholars believe this reflects a spiritual vision, where animals existed in a realm beyond physical space, perhaps as totems or deities. Yet for all their beauty, the paintings nearly vanished within decades of their discovery. The cave's delicate ecosystem, sealed for millennia, couldn't withstand the breath and body heat of thousands of visitors. Algae dubbed green sickness began devouring the pigments, while calcite deposits dubbed white leprosy crusted over the art. By 1963, the French government took drastic action, sealing the cave to the public and creating an exact replica, Lascaux II, for tourists. Even today, only a handful of conservators are permitted inside the original for brief monitoring sessions, armed with climate sensors and non-invasive scanners to track the slightest changes in humidity or temperature. The mystery of why these paintings were made still tantalizes researchers. Were they hunting magic meant to ensure successful kills, a prehistoric planetarium with animal symbols mapping the stars, or something more intimate, a coming-of-age ritual where adolescents proved their worth by venturing into the sacred darkness. The absence of human figures, save for one enigmatic bird-headed man, only deepens the enigma. Recent discoveries in the cave's deepest chambers suggest the artists may have deliberately chosen acoustically resonant spots where chanting or drumming would amplify, eerily hinting at ceremonies where art, music, and spirituality intertwined. What makes Lascaux extraordinary isn't just its age, but its fragility. Unlike stone monuments or gold treasures, these pigments are whispers on the edge of vanishing, reminding us that not all history shouts. Some of it lingers in the quietest strokes, waiting for the right light to bring it back to life. And as conservators battle time itself to preserve them, the cave becomes more than an artifact, it's a mirror, forcing us to ask what of our own world we're willing to protect for the next 17,000 years. Buried beneath the ashes of an ancient Minoan palace on the island of Crete, a palm-sized clay disc waited 3,700 years to tell its story, but to this day no one can quite understand what it's saying. The Phaistos disc, unearthed in 1908 by Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier, is one of archaeology's most tantalizing puzzles. Roughly the diameter of a dinner plate, its surface spirals with 45 unique symbols: men running, birds in flight, shields, flowers stamped in perfect symmetry. But here's what makes it extraordinary. These aren't hand-carved markings. Each symbol was pressed into the clay with a pre-made seal, making this the earliest known example of movable type printing, a technology that wouldn't reappear until Gutenberg's press 3,000 years later. Theories about its purpose collide like waves against Cretan cliffs. Some scholars argue it's a religious hymn, its spiral path mirroring sacred labyrinths found at Knossos. Others see a lunar calendar with symbols tracking celestial cycles, the shield marking a full moon, the plumed head a solstice. Then there's the more radical idea: it's a board game, its path a playing track. The truth, every attempt at decipherment hits the same wall. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, there's no bilingual text to compare it to. The script, dubbed Linear A, remains undeciphered, and the disc's singular nature means there's nothing else like it to cross-reference. Even the direction to read it is disputed. Should the spiral wind inward or outward? Recent high-resolution scans reveal fascinating details: fingerprints in the clay, slight variations in symbol depth that suggest multiple craftsmen. Some symbols appear rotated or flipped, as if the stamps were reused haphazardly. Yet the overall composition feels deliberate, almost musical. One controversial study proposed the symbols represent syllables of an early Greek dialect, but when translated, the text reads like nonsense. Other researchers suggest it's a diplomatic message from a foreign power, explaining its isolation in the archaeological record. The disc's modern saga is just as enigmatic. Housed in Herakleon's Archaeological Museum, it's never been loaned abroad, guarded like a state secret. Replicas abound, from scholarly models to gaudy tourist trinkets, each interpretation reflecting the biases of its era. One thing's certain: until Linear A is cracked, the Phaistos disc will keep its secrets, a 4,000-year-old invitation to wonder, stamped in clay and waiting for the right mind to listen. This artifact's true genius might lie not in its message but in its mystery. It forces us to confront how much of history is guesswork, how easily knowledge can vanish. After all, if something this carefully crafted could become indecipherable, what of our own digital age might future archaeologists find equally baffling? The disc doesn't just represent a lost language, it's a mirror, reflecting the fragile threads that connect us across time. Resting behind 7 locks in Prague Castle's crown chamber, a gold circlet studded with sapphires and rubies glows with the weight of 1,000 years of kings, and whispers of a curse that lingers like winter frost. The crown of Saint Wenceslas isn't just a relic, it's the beating heart of Czech identity, forged in the 14th century for Charles IV, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia. Crafted from 22-carat gold and adorned with 96 precious stones, including a sapphire so large it was once believed to have adorned the brow of the crown's namesake. The martyred Duke Wenceslas, patron saint of the Czech lands, this isn't merely a symbol of power. It's a sacred covenant between ruler and nation, one that legend says exacts a terrible price from those who wear it without right. The crown's origins read like a medieval epic. Charles commissioned it in 1346, blending imperial grandeur with saintly reverence. Its design is a masterclass in symbolism. The cross atop the crown intersects with a second crossbar, forming the Cross of Suffering, while the pearls dotting its frame represent the tears of the Virgin Mary. But the true magic lies in its mythos. Tradition holds that the crown itself chooses its rightful wearer, and woe to any usurper who dares defy that divine selection. Stories abound of those who ignored the warning. Nazi officer Reinhard Heydrich, the Butcher of Prague, briefly placed the crown on his head during World War II, only to be assassinated months later. Communist leader Clement Gottwald reportedly suffered a fatal aneurysm within days of wearing it for his presidential portrait in 1948. Even touching it without permission is said to invite calamity. Guards tasked with its protection must wear white gloves, and only 7 keys, held by the nation's highest officials, can unlock the chamber where it rests. For centuries, the crown presided over coronations in St. Vitus Cathedral, where kings knelt to pledge their service to Bohemia. Each gem was believed to hold mystical properties, the sapphires guarding against treachery, the rubies symbolizing the blood of Christ, and the martyred Wenceslas himself, who was murdered by his own brother in 935. But the crown's power isn't just supernatural, it's political. When Habsburg rulers tried to move it to Vienna in the 17th century, riots erupted. Its return to Prague in the 1920s became a national celebration, a reclaiming of sovereignty after centuries of foreign domination. Today, it's displayed only on rare occasions, its velvet-lined case a fortress against both thieves and the ravages of time. What makes this artifact extraordinary isn't just its jeweled brilliance or the legends coiled around it like protective serpents. It's the way it binds past to present. When Czech presidents take office, they stand near its chamber, never touching it, but acknowledging its silent witness. In a land repeatedly reshaped by empires and ideologies, the crown endures as a reminder that some symbols are heavier than gold. They carry the weight of history itself and the unbreakable promise that no ruler owns a nation, they merely serve it. And perhaps that's the real curse of Saint Wenceslas, not death for the unworthy, but the haunting knowledge that crowns are fleeting while the people and their memory are eternal. Stretching nearly 70 meters long but no taller than your arm, the Bayeux Tapestry isn't just a medieval masterpiece, it's a cinematic epic stitched in wool. Woven in the late 11th century, this embroidered chronicle brings the Norman conquest of England to life with a vibrancy that puts modern history books to shame. Picture this: 623 human figures, 200 horses, and 55 dogs frozen mid-action across linen, their stories told in 58 scenes that culminate in the Battle of Hastings. But here's the twist: this isn't just history, it's propaganda threaded with as much political spin as a modern campaign ad commissioned by Bishop Odo, William the Conqueror's half-brother, to justify Norman rule. The tapestry stitches whisper secrets of its creation. Contrary to its name, this isn't a true tapestry, it's embroidery, with colored wool yarn meticulously stitched onto 9 joined panels of bleached linen. At least 8 distinct hands worked on it, their styles subtly shifting like chapters in a book. The borders teem with allegorical beasts and scenes from Aesop's fables, offering moral commentary on the main narrative. Look closer and you'll spot hidden gems, a cleric striking a woman, an act so scandalous it was likely a critique of Saxon corruption, or Halley's comet blazing overhead, an omen the Anglo-Saxon King Harold ignored at his peril. Surviving nearly 1,000 years is its own epic. The tapestry narrowly escaped the French Revolution when a local lawyer repurposed it as a wagon cover, only for townsfolk to rescue it mid-use. Napoleon later paraded it as inspiration for his own planned invasion of England, while Hitler ordered it studied for insights into Norman military strategy during World War II. Today, it's housed in Normandy's Bayeux Museum, displayed in a dark, humidity-controlled case to protect its fading hues, though high-resolution scans now let anyone examine each thread in microscopic detail. But the real drama lies in its biases. The tapestry's Saxon perspective is conspicuously absent. Harold Roman II, the defeated English king, is depicted breaking oaths. His coronation scene suspiciously includes a ghostly figure thought to represent his doomed pledge to support William's claim. Yet there are fleeting moments of ambiguity. The death scene of Harold, struck by an arrow to the eye, though later stitches suggest decapitation, carries unexpected pathos. Was this a silent nod to Saxon suffering or merely dramatic flair? Scholars still spar over whether the tapestry's unknown designer wove subtle critiques into its threads, or if every stitch served Norman triumphalism. What makes this cloth monument extraordinary isn't just its artistry or endurance. It's how it collapses the distance between history and storytelling. When you stand before it, you're not just seeing a battle. You're witnessing how power shapes memory, how threads can weave truth and myth into a single, inseparable fabric. And perhaps that's its most enduring lesson, that history, like embroidery, is always a matter of perspective. Choose your colors carefully, and the narrative will follow. Beneath the scorching sun of ancient Babylon, a gateway to the gods once shimmered like a mirage. Its surface alive with dragons, bulls, and mythical beasts, each tile glazed in a blue so vivid it seemed stolen from the sky itself. The Ishtar Gate wasn't just an entrance, it was a declaration of power built by King Nebuchadnezzar II around 575 BC. As the crown jewel of his empire, stretching nearly 50 feet high and adorned with over 1,000 indigo bricks, it formed the grand processional way into the city, a path trodden by priests and kings during sacred festivals. But what truly set it apart wasn't just its scale, it was the audacious artistry. Each brick was molded, glazed, and fired to perfection, their cobalt hue derived from rare lapis lazuli and copper compounds, an ancient alchemy that defied the desert's relentless fade. The gate's reconstruction reads like an archaeological thriller. When German excavator Robert Koldewey unearthed its fragments in the early 1900s, he faced a puzzle of epic proportions. Thousands of shattered bricks lay scattered across the site, their once vibrant colors muted by centuries of sand and wind. But Koldewey noticed something miraculous: many still bore cuneiform inscriptions from Nebuchadnezzar himself. I placed wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways and adorned them with lavish splendor so that people might gaze on them in wonder. Armed with these clues, teams painstakingly catalogued each fragment, shipping crates of bricks to Berlin where, like a grand Babylonian jigsaw, the gate was resurrected. Today, in the Pergamon Museum, visitors walk through a near-complete section, the dragon's golden scales and bull's muscular flanks restored to their original menace. Yet the gate's true brilliance lies in its purpose. This wasn't just architecture, it was theater. During the New Year's festival, statues of Babylon's gods would parade through its arches, their gilded forms reflecting off the glazed tiles as crowds thronged the streets. The blue wasn't merely decorative, it symbolized the divine, a celestial bridge between earth and heaven. Nebuchadnezzar knew the power of spectacle, and the gate served as his ultimate propaganda piece, announcing Babylon's dominance to both subjects and rivals. Even the animal reliefs carried coded messages. The dragon of Marduk, Babylon's patron god, the bull of Adad, storm deity, and the lion of Ishtar, goddess of war and love, each a divine endorsement of the king's rule. Debates still simmer over the gate's displacement. Iraq has long requested its return, arguing the removal under Ottoman-era permits amounted to colonial plunder. Germany counters that the gate's fragile state made reconstruction impossible in situ, and its Berlin display allows global access. Meanwhile, modern Babylon's ruins, neglected for decades, now feature a partial replica, a shadow of the original's grandeur, its colors fading under the same sun that once baked Nebuchadnezzar's bricks to immortality. What endures is the gate's whisper across millennia. In its blue glaze, we see the birth of urban majesty. The moment a city became more than brick and mortar, it became a dream, a declaration. And in Nebuchadnezzar's boastful inscriptions, we hear the echo of every ruler who ever sought to carve their name into eternity. The irony: his gate outlasted his empire, a monument not just to his pride, but to humanity's unshakable urge to build, to beautify, and to be remembered. In a quiet field near the Sichuan village of Sangsingdui in 1986, archaeologists unearthed a site that would rewrite China's ancient history. Pits brimming with bronze sculptures so surreal, they seemed plucked from a sci-fi fantasy. Unlike the serene faces of Shang Dynasty artifacts, these masks gaped with exaggerated, almost extraterrestrial features, bulging eyes like binoculars, ears stretched wide as if straining to hear whispers across millennia, and snouts curling into eerie, knowing smiles. These weren't just art. They were a declaration that an entire civilization, lost to time, had once thrived outside the traditional cradle of the Yellow River, with a world view as bold and bizarre as the bronzes themselves. The scale of the discovery was staggering. Over 1,000 artifacts ranging from towering, 8-foot-tall humanoid figures to gilded masks thin as parchment were buried in ritualistic arrangements, some deliberately shattered before interment. The craftsmanship defied expectations. These weren't crude forerunners to later Chinese metallurgy. They were masterpieces. One mask, with its protruding pupils and gilt traces, might represent the mythical shaman King Kangkong, described in later texts as having eyes like crab apples. Another, a bronze tree stretching nearly 13 feet high, bore birds perched on branches and dangling fruits, possibly an early cosmogram linking Earth to heaven. The artistry was so advanced it forced archaeologists to confront a startling truth. The Sangsingdui culture, flourishing over 3,000 years ago, was a peer to the Shang dynasty, not a footnote. But why were these treasures buried? Theories swirl like the dragons coiled around the bronzes. Some suggest a cataclysmic event, earthquakes or floods, prompted a ritual killing of sacred objects to appease the gods. Others propose political upheaval, with invaders smashing symbols of the old order. The most haunting possibility: this was a deliberate act of forgetting, a culture erasing its own identity to protect secrets too potent to carry forward. The absence of writing at the site deepens the enigma. Without inscriptions, the masks' meanings are locked in silence, their stories told only through form and symbol. The impact on Chinese archaeology was seismic. For decades, the Yellow River had been framed as the sole birthplace of Chinese civilization. Sangsingdui shattered that narrative, revealing a mosaic of regional cultures with distinct artistic and spiritual traditions. The bronze's stylistic quirks, those otherworldly eyes, the fusion of human and animal traits, hint at influences from as far as Southeast Asia or even Mesopotamia, suggesting trade networks far more extensive than imagined. Yet the culture's sudden disappearance around 1200 BCE remains one of Asia's great historical mysteries. Did its people migrate, assimilate, or vanish in some forgotten catastrophe? Today, these bronzes mesmerize visitors to the Sangsingdui Museum, where infrared scans reveal hidden repairs, ancient artisans patching cracks with molten bronze, as if determined to preserve their vision for eternity. Replicas of the masks have even inspired avant-garde fashion and film designs, their uncanny aesthetic bridging ancient and modern. But perhaps their greatest legacy is the humility they impose. They remind us that history isn't a single thread, but a tangled web of lost worlds, each with its own dreams etched in metal. And somewhere beneath Sichuan soil, more answers, and surely more questions wait for the next turn of the spade. Peering into the bog where workers cut peat near Gråbøl, Denmark in 1952, locals thought they'd found a recent murder victim. What they lifted from the murky water was far older and far more extraordinary. The Gråbøl man lay perfectly preserved, his skin turned leathery by the peat's tannins, his fiery red hair still clinging to his scalp, his throat slit so deeply the wound gaped like a second mouth. This wasn't just a corpse, it was a time capsule, a snapshot of violent ritual frozen for over 2,000 years. The details of his death read like a crime scene report. Forensic analysis revealed he'd been killed in his 30s, struck from behind before his throat was carved ear to ear, a method echoing descriptions of Iron Age sacrificial rites. His last meal, preserved in his stomach, contained a gruel made from weeds and barley, likely consumed hours before his death. But here's what's chilling: traces of hallucinogenic fungi mixed with the grain. Had he been drugged to dull his senses, or was this part of a ritual to bridge the human and divine? His hands showed no defensive wounds, no signs of struggle. This was no random murder. Every detail pointed to ceremony. Bog bodies like Gråbøl man offer macabre windows into Iron Age beliefs. The acidic, oxygen-poor wetlands acted as natural mummifiers, slowing decay while tanning skin and hair. Across northern Europe, hundreds have been found, many bearing marks of deliberate violence, strangulation, blunt force trauma, even ritualistic positioning. Scholars believe these weren't executions of criminals, but offerings to gods of fertility or war. The bogs, liminal spaces between land and water, may have been seen as gateways to the otherworld. Gråbøl man's twisted posture, one arm bent, unnaturally suggests he might have been pinned down after death, perhaps to prevent his return. Modern science has unraveled even darker secrets. CT scans show his bones were unbroken, ruling out torture, but isotope analysis reveals a lifetime of malnutrition. His crooked fingers, bent from labor, hint at a hardscrabble existence. Yet his neatly trimmed nails and lack of calluses raise questions. Was he a captive, groomed for sacrifice, or a volunteer seeking honor in death? The contrast between his brutal end and his community's careful preparation, placing him naked in the bog, surrounded by symbolic objects now lost to time, speaks to a culture wrestling with fear and reverence. Today, he rests in Aarhus's Mosgård Museum, his features so intact you might expect his eyelids to flutter. Conservationists maintain his delicate state with precise humidity control, a far cry from the peat that kept him whole for centuries. His display sparks ethical debates. Should we exhibit the dead so openly, or does his educational value outweigh the discomfort? For archaeologists, he's irreplaceable evidence. For Danes, he's an ancestor whose silent lips hold forgotten truths. And for us, a reminder that the past isn't always progress. Sometimes it's a knife in the dark, a whispered prayer, and a body sinking slowly into the waiting earth. The bogs giveth and the bogs keepeth. Gråbøl man's grim preservation forces us to confront how much history is written not in scrolls or stone, but in flesh and bone, and how often violence sits at the heart of what we call sacred. Hidden in the vaults of Dresden State Library, a fragile, accordion-folded book of bark paper whispers secrets from a vanished world. The Dresden Codex, one of only 4 surviving Maya manuscripts from before the Spanish conquest, isn't just a relic. It's a portal to a civilization that mapped the cosmos with startling precision. Created around the 11th century by scribes painting with quills and mineral pigments, its 74 pages unfold like a celestial roadmap, crammed with intricate calculations predicting Venus cycles, lunar eclipses, and even a rain god's wrath. But what makes this codex extraordinary isn't just its content, it's the miracle of its survival. When Spanish bishops burned Maya libraries in the 1600s, deeming their texts heretical, This single volume somehow slipped through the flames, later surfacing in Vienna before finding its way to Germany. Now flip the page of history to Mainz, Germany, 50 years after the Codex's creation, where a different kind of revolution was taking shape. Johannes Gutenberg's printing press didn't just produce books, it shattered the monopoly of knowledge. His 42-line Bible, printed around 1455, turned scripture into a commodity. Its crisp Latin letters marching in uniform rose where scribes once toiled for months on single pages. Unlike the Dresden Codex, painstakingly painted by hand, Gutenberg's Bibles were mass-produced, with nearly 180 copies rolling off presses in just 3 years. Yet for all their technological disparity, both artifacts share a haunting irony: they're vanishing. The Dresden Codex's bark pages, once vibrant with Maya blue and cochineal red, now fade under even cautious light exposure. Recent multispectral imaging has revealed ghostly undertext erased calculations and corrections, hinting at earlier drafts scrubbed away by the scribes themselves. Meanwhile, of Gutenberg's original Bibles, only 49 survive, many missing pages or stripped of their illuminations by collectors. The very act of preserving them has often endangered them further. 19th century restorers glued tracing paper over the Codex's fragile pages, unintentionally accelerating ink corrosion. Digitization has become their unlikely lifeline. The Dresden Library's ultra-high-resolution scans allow researchers to study the Codex's astronomical tables without touching its delicate surface, revealing previously invisible notations in the folds. Similarly, the Vatican Library's digitized Gutenberg Bible lets anyone zoom in to see the texture of 15th century paper, the variations in inking that prove which sheets came from Gutenberg's press first. But here's the twist: while digitizing the Bible celebrates the birth of mass production, scanning the Codex is an act of cultural reclamation. For modern Maya communities, these virtual pages aren't just curiosities, they're fragments of a knowledge system nearly erased by colonialism. Scholars from Yucatan now collaborate with German archivists, reinterpreting eclipse tables that their ancestors might have used to predict rains for milpa crops. What unites these two texts across 5 centuries and an ocean? Both are time capsules of human obsession, one with divine revelation, the other with celestial patterns. The Gutenberg Bible promised salvation through widespread literacy. The Dresden Codex sought order in the cosmos's chaos. One was made to multiply, the other to mystify. Yet today, their fates converge in the glow of screens, proving that preservation isn't just about saving ink and paper. It's about keeping alive the stubborn human impulse to make meaning, whether through printed words or painted stars. Standing guard in the Louvre's Egyptian Antiquities wing, the Sphinx of Tanis locks eyes with every passerby, its weathered granite face radiating a quiet, unnerving power. Unlike the colossal Great Sphinx of Giza, this 12-foot sentinel is compact yet no less imposing, its lion's body coiled with latent energy and its human face frozen in an expression of timeless vigilance. Discovered in 1825 amid the ruins of Tanis, Egypt's once great delta capital, this sphinx carried no plaque, no inscription to name its maker. Yet the artistry, the regal headcloth framing that stern, broad-cheeked visage whispered of a pharaoh's hand. Experts now believe it may depict none other than Khafre, the 4th dynasty ruler linked to the Great Sphinx itself. The resemblance is uncanny, the same high, prominent cheekbones, the same subtly smiling lips as if sharing a secret with eternity. But the Sphinx of Tanis's journey to Paris is steeped in irony. When Napoleon's troops swept through Egypt in 1799, they mistook it for a war trophy, dragging it back to France alongside obelisks and sarcophagi. Little did they know this wasn't just plunder, it was a puzzle. For decades, it languished in storage, dismissed as a minor artifact until scholars noticed something startling. The style wasn't late period, as assumed, but Old Kingdom, dating it over 4,000 years old, far older than Tanis itself. how did it get there? The likely answer is flood. The Nile's shifting currents may have washed it downstream from Giza or Memphis, where it once stood guard at a temple entrance, only to be rediscovered millennia later by a civilization that barely understood its origins. The Louvre's conservation efforts reveal even more secrets. Laser scans show tool marks matching those found on Khafre's pyramid complex, bolstering the connection. Yet controversy lingers. Some Egyptologists argue the face resembles Djedefre, Khafre's brother, pointing to subtle differences in the headcloth's folds. Others suggest it's a later homage carved by New Kingdom pharaohs emulating Old Kingdom greatness. The debate underscores a deeper truth. Even the mightiest symbols can become enigmas, their stories rewritten by time and tide. Today, the Sphinx of Tanis sits under the museum's skylights, its once polished surface now pitted by centuries of wind and sand. Visitors often walk past, drawn to flashier treasures like the Rosetta Stone or the seated scribe. But those who pause, who meet its gaze, feel the weight of its silence. This isn't just a statue. It's a survivor, a stone witness to dynasties risen and fallen, to conquerors who mistook majesty for loot, and to the patience of history itself, which always, eventually, reclaims its own. On a quiet November afternoon in 1992, farmer Peter Watling and his friend Eric Laws set out with a metal detector near the village of Hoxne in Suffolk, England. Watling had lost a hammer and hoped the device might help him find it. Instead, the detector screamed with a signal so strong it nearly deafened them. Digging just a few feet down, their shovels struck not iron tools but the unmistakable glint of gold, a discovery that would rewrite the story of Roman Britain. The Hoxne hoard, as it came to be known, wasn't just a handful of coins, it was a treasure hunter's dream. Over 15,000 gold and silver pieces, including solid gold necklaces, silver ladles, and pepper pots so ornate they rivaled modern jewelry. The real kicker, that missing hammer was found too, resting atop the hoard like a cosmic punchline, buried around 450 CE. The hoard captures an empire in freefall. Rome's grip on Britain was slipping, its legions recalled to defend the crumbling heartland. Amid the chaos, some wealthy family, perhaps a retired official or a local landowner, gathered their most precious belongings and stuffed them into a wooden chest, locking it with intricate silver keys before hiding it beneath the earth. The collection reads like a Roman-era emergency kit: gold coins stamped with emperors who ruled centuries apart, silver spoons inscribed with Christian symbols alongside pagan motifs, even a tiny gold bracelet delicately fitted for a child's wrist. The pepper pots, shaped like imperial empresses with sliding bases to dispense their precious spice, hint at a lifestyle of luxury about to vanish overnight. What makes the Hoxne hoard extraordinary isn't just its wealth, but its snapshot of a society straddling two worlds. One spoon bears a Cairo symbol, an early Christian emblem, while another is engraved with the name Aurelius Ursicinus, possibly the hoard's owner. Was this a family hedging their bets between old gods and new faith? The coins tell their own tale, minted under emperors from Gratian to Constantine Roman III. They span generations, suggesting this fortune was painstakingly accumulated, not plundered. Yet the hoard's burial speaks of desperation. Someone carefully wrapped each item in fabric or leather, then buried the chest upside down, a possible ritual act or just a frantic attempt to throw off looters. Either way, they never returned. The British Museum's acquisition of the hoard set legal precedents. Unlike many detectorists who quietly sell finds, Laws immediately reported the discovery, splitting the reward with Watling under Britain's Treasure Act. Today, the hoard's display is a masterclass in conservation. Gold coins glow under precise lighting, their surfaces unmarred by cleaning, while interactive screens let visitors zoom in on spoon inscriptions invisible to the naked eye. Yet controversy simmers. Some argue the hoard's true home is Suffolk, where local museums display replicas unable to afford the originals. More than just shiny objects, the Hoxne hoard is a time capsule of fear and hope. That child's bracelet, a reminder that crisis spares no one. Those pepper pots, proof that even in collapse people clung to comfort, and that humble hammer. An accidental monument to the ordinary lives entangled with history's grand arcs, buried, forgotten, but never truly lost beneath the shadow of Germany's Mittelberg Hill. Two looters armed with nothing more than a metal detector and a pocketful of greed stumbled upon something far bigger than they bargained for in 1999. What they initially mistook for an unremarkable bronze relic turned out to be one of the most astonishing archaeological finds of the century, the Nebra sky disk. Roughly the size of a dinner plate and weighing just over 4 pounds, its surface shimmered with gold leaf symbols, a crescent moon, a full sun, and a smattering of stars, including a tight cluster that scholars later identified as the Pleiades. But the true shock came when experts dated it. This wasn't some medieval trinket, it was crafted around 1600 BCE, making it the oldest known concrete depiction of cosmic phenomena in human history. The looters had no idea what they'd unearthed. After hacking it out of the ground along with bronze swords and axe heads, they sold the entire hoard to a black market dealer for a paltry $31,000. But their greed became their undoing. When word of the disc leaked into academic circles, archaeologists teamed with police to orchestrate a sting operation in Basel, Switzerland, arresting the traffickers and recovering the artifacts in 2002. Forensic soil analysis later confirmed the disc's origins a precise match to the disturbed earth on Mittelberg, where it had once been ceremonially buried atop what might have been an ancient observatory. Decoding the disc's symbols revealed a sophistication no one expected from Bronze Age Europe. The gold arcs along its edges weren't mere decoration. They marked the solstice sun's annual path, a tool for tracking seasons critical to farming. The Pleiades cluster, visible in spring and autumn, likely signaled planting and harvest times, but the most electrifying revelation, a later addition to the disc, a sunboat crafted from gold scraped from older sections, suggested evolving beliefs. Scholars theorize this symbolized the mythological vessel carrying the sun across the sky, evidence of a spiritual shift from pure astronomy to cosmology. The legal battle that followed was as dramatic as the discovery. The looters, initially sentenced to probation, later sued the state of Saxony-Anhalt for a share of the disc's value, estimated at nearly $12 million. Courts ultimately ruled against them, declaring the artifact cultural patrimony. Today, the disc rests in Hull's State Museum of Prehistory, displayed in a nitrogen-filled case to prevent further corrosion. But debates about its meaning rage on. Some researchers argue it's proof of a pan-European Bronze Age network, noting similarities to symbols found as far away as Crete and Egypt. Others caution against overinterpretation. Could it simply be a local chieftain status symbol, repurposed over generations? What lingers isn't just the disc's celestial map, but the sheer improbability of its survival. For over 3 millennia, it lay undisturbed until greed and science collided to drag it back into the light. Now, when you stand before it, you're not just seeing stars, you're witnessing humanity's first attempts to pin the cosmos to the earth, to make the infinite feel just a little less untouchable. Assigning a dollar value to history seems almost impossible. How do you price something that's literally irreplaceable? Yet behind the velvet ropes of museums and auction houses, teams of experts do exactly that, weighing everything from gold content to geopolitical drama. Take the Rosetta Stone, for example. While its material value, basalt slab with some inscriptions, might fetch a modest sum at a stonemason's shop, its historical weight as the key to deciphering hieroglyphs makes it virtually priceless. Insurers might slap a number like $50 million on it for transport, but that's just a formality. The real appraisal process is far more complex, blending 3 key factors: provenance, cultural impact, and plain old market demand. Provenance: the artifact's origin story can skyrocket value. A gold bracelet from ancient Rome might be impressive, but if it once adorned the wrist of Emperor Nero, its worth explodes. Forensic techniques like thermoluminescence dating and X-ray fluorescence now verify age and composition, but paperwork matters just as much. A sculpture with documented ownership tracing back to a 19th century explorer's journal commands higher prices than one surfacing mysteriously in a private collection. This paper trail also fuels repatriation battles. When Turkey demanded the return of the Troy treasures from Berlin's Museum of Prehistory, their case hinged on excavation records proving they'd been smuggled out illegally in the 1870s. Material worth still plays a role, especially for items like the Mask of Agamemnon, hammered from a single sheet of gold. Commodity markets literally set the floor price, current gold rates multiplied by weight, but craftsmanship multiples it exponentially. A Byzantine chalice might contain just 12 ounces of silver, but the intricacy of its filigree could justify a $20 million auction estimate. Rarity amplifies this further. The Uluburun shipwrecks cobalt glass ingots, once worth their weight in pharaoh's taxes, now outvalue diamonds because only a handful exist outside museums. Then there's the black market's dark arithmetic. Looted artifacts often sell for pennies compared to their legal counterparts precisely because they're stripped of context. A Sumerian cuneiform tablet might go for $30,000 in a Dubai backroom, but authenticated with lineage tracing to add a zero. This illicit trade isn't just about lost profits, it erases history. When ISIS bulldozed Nimrud, they weren't just destroying statues, they were burning appraisable assets to fund terror, knowing collectors would pay millions for rescued fragments. Interpol's ID Art database now tracks stolen pieces using AI image matching, but the damage is often irreversible. Repatriation debates add another layer. Greece's campaign for the Parthenon marbles isn't just sentimental, it's economic. Studies show visitor numbers to Athens' Acropolis Museum could double if the marbles returned, boosting tourism revenue by an estimated $200 million annually. Meanwhile, institutions like the British Museum argue their global reach gives artifacts broader impact. It's a valuation tug-of-war. Does the Rosetta Stone educate more people in London than it would in Cairo? There's no spreadsheet for that calculus. In the end, an artifact's true value might be the conversations it sparks. The Koh-i-Noor diamond isn't just a gem, it's a prism refracting colonial history, national pride, and the ethics of ownership. When Christie's auctions a Ming vase, they're not just selling porcelain, they're trading a tangible piece of human legacy. And perhaps that's the most startling appraisal of all. These objects remind us that culture has no fixed price, only endless interest. Picture a man in his trademark fedora, standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, his passion for Egyptology as fiery as the desert sun. Dr. Zahi Hawass isn't just an archaeologist, he's a modern-day storyteller who turned the dust of tombs into global headlines. From the moment he burst onto the scene in the 1990s, Hawass became the face of Egyptian archaeology, spearheading high-profile investigations like the scans of Tutankhamun's tomb for hidden chambers. His showmanship, whether unwrapping mummies on live television or demanding the return of looted artifacts, blurs the line between scholar and celebrity. But beneath the bravado lies serious scholarship. Hawass revolutionized the field by training a new generation of Egyptian archaeologists, shifting control of their own heritage back to local experts after decades of Western dominance. Then there's Mary Leakey, a woman whose patience and precision in Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge rewrote the story of human evolution. While her husband Louis grabbed early acclaim, it was Mary's meticulous excavation of the 3.6-million-year-old Litole footprints in 1978 that delivered undeniable proof. Our ancestors walked upright far earlier than previously believed. Unlike Hawass's theatrical flair, Leakey worked in near silence, her focus locked on the ground beneath her knees. she didn't just find bones, she read landscapes, noticing subtle disturbances in sediment that others missed. Her discoveries, from the robust Zinjanthropus skull to the first fossils of Proconsul africanus, didn't just fill museum cases, they redrew humanity's family tree. The allure of these figures isn't just their finds, it's how they've shaped public imagination. Indiana Jones may be fiction, but real archaeologists like Hawass and Leakey prove truth can be just as thrilling. Hawass harnessed media like no one before him. His documentaries turned CT scans of mummies into prime-time events, making viewers feel like participants in live discovery. Leakey, though less flashy, became a symbol of perseverance, her work proving that breakthroughs often come not in dramatic leaps, but in decades of careful sifting. Pop culture amplifies their impact, from video games featuring Hawass-esque characters to films drawing on Leakey's rugged fieldwork, yet their legacies spark debate. Critics argue Hawass's media dominance oversimplifies complex research, while some question his tenure as Egypt's antiquities minister amid political upheaval. Leakey, meanwhile, faced constant underestimation as a woman in a male-dominated field, her contributions sometimes overshadowed until later in life. But both share a common thread: they made archaeology feel urgent. Whether it's Hawass rallying crowds with claims of the discovery of the century, or Leakey's quiet determination to trace humanity's first steps, they remind us that the past isn't static. It's a puzzle waiting to be solved, with each find rewriting what we thought we knew. What separates these icons from Hollywood caricatures' authentic stakes? When Hawass fights for repatriation, it's not just about ownership, it's about who gets to narrate history. When Leakey brushed volcanic ash from those Litoli footprints, she wasn't just uncovering tracks, she was walking alongside our earliest ancestors. Their work proves that archaeology at its best isn't about treasure, it's about connection. And in a world obsessed with the next big thing, they teach us that sometimes the most profound revelations come from looking down. From the Rosetta Stone's decoded hieroglyphs to the Nebra sky disk's celestial maps, these 30 artifacts aren't just relics, they're revolutions frozen in time. Each one cracked open a door we didn't even know was locked, reshaping history in ways their creators could never have imagined. Think about it. Tutankhamun's golden mask gave us intimate access to a pharaoh's divinity, while the Antikythera Mechanism proved ancient engineers rivaled our own ingenuity. The Dead Sea Scrolls rewrote religious scholarship, and the Terracotta Army revealed an emperor's obsession with immortality. These objects don't just belong to museums, they're the shared inheritance of humanity, whispering stories of innovation, power, and sometimes heartbreaking loss. What's truly staggering is how interconnected these discoveries are. The Rosetta Stone's translation unlocked Egypt's tombs, while the Baghdad Battery, whether an ancient power source or not, challenges our assumptions about technological progress. The Voynich manuscript taunts us with its unreadable script, a reminder that for all we've decoded, some secrets remain stubbornly silent, and artifacts like the Cyrus cylinder. They're not just history, they're mirrors reflecting struggles over human rights and cultural identity that still rage today. This is where you come in. Behind every artifact we've explored, there's a moment of discovery: a farmer's plow striking gold, a diver's hand brushing against ancient marble. That thrill isn't reserved for archaeologists. Your local museum might hold fragments of the same awe, whether it's a Viking hoard in Oslo or a Maya stela in Mexico City. History isn't just in textbooks or behind glass, it's layered beneath your feet, waiting for the curious to uncover it. So tell us, which of these treasures ignited your imagination? Was it the eerie gaze of the Olmec colossal heads or the delicate genius of the Lewis chessmen? Drop your pick in the comments. We want to hear what connects you to these fragments of the past. And here's the thing, this list is just the beginning. For every artifact we've showcased, dozens more are out there, each with its own game-changing story. Maybe you'll be the one to stumble upon the next great discovery, whether it's in a forgotten attic or a quiet corner of a museum you've visited 100 times. Because the wildest truth about history, it's not finished yet. Every cracked seal, every scanned manuscript, every re-evaluated shovel of dirt can rewrite what we thought we knew. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and most of all, keep listening. The past has a way of speaking when we're ready to hear it.